the idea is we all have unique strengths and unique ways of working, unique ways of finding energy. Talk us through, there's these 6 types of genius.
Right. So there's 6 different geniuses, different skills that are necessary to get any work done. So these 6 things are, if you're doing a project, launching a program, running a family, a school, a church, whatever else it is, if the team that's responsible for that doesn't have all 6 of these geniuses, there's a gap there that needs to be filled. And those 6 things are the genius of wonder, which is pondering the bigger picture, like what's going on here and why is this like this? The genius of invention, I'm going to solve that problem you're wondering about. The genius of discernment, which is I have a good way of evaluating things and knowing if they're going to work or not. The genius of galvanizing, which is I'm going to get people excited and moving and inspired. The genius of enablement, which is I'm going to get in there and make this work, and I'm going to be the supporter and the helper and I'm going to be available to people. And then the genius of tenacity, which is I'm going to push it across the finish line. So those are the 6 things, and they're all geniuses. Some people will say, well, invention is the real genius. Nope. Without wonder, without discernment, without all the others, you don't have genius. It all comes together. The issue here is only 2 of these come naturally to any given person. You and I both have 2 that give us joy and energy and where we're naturally gifted. It's a God-given talent. Now, the problem is we'll want to use that talent all the time because that's where we're drawn to. So when my wife asked me to clean the garage, I'm going to use my geniuses even though they might not correspond to what she needs. We also have 2 that we're uniquely poor at.
Okay.
You know, God gives us gifts and he also gives us deficiencies. And so there's things that we're not good at. Well, if we don't know what we're naturally gifted at, and we don't know what we're naturally poor at, how in the world are we going to maximize the goodness we bring to our teams and avoid the things that will probably drag us and our teams down? And that's what this assessment is about, which came about by accident. You know, I've been frustrated in my work in mild ways for 20 years because there was parts of it that I didn't like and I didn't know why. And my team would be like, Pat, you love what you do, but why do you get so grumpy? And I was like, I don't know. And so one day at work, we just sat down and figured this out. And we were like, oh my gosh, I think this is universal. The 12 hours after coming up with this, Daniel, we wrote it on the whiteboard. One of our consultants saw it, shared with one of his clients, and the client started to cry and said, this is the problem I have. This is why he was emotionally moved. He said, I am struggling with this and now I understand why. So out of that, we decided, I think there's something here. And then now we have this assessment and it's out there and people are using it and it's crazy.
So fun.
And people look at it and say, I finally figured out why I'm good at certain things and why I'm not and how I need to adjust my career or my job or my family.
I want to talk more about the assessment in a second. First, I want to stay at this philosophical level. There seems to be an unspoken, maybe even an unconscious expectation that's probably a myth, and that is that, well, all these things matter in everybody. I think leaders often think, I want all my people to care about all those things, almost like they're virtues that we should all be aspiring to do all of this. Why is that not the case?
Because I think it's because we need each other. You know, we didn't get put on this earth to live separate. I mean, you know, and I'm a follower of Jesus, and if you think about it, God makes us need each other. And if any one person had everything, we wouldn't need each other. And I think this is what makes teams great. And people talk a lot about diversity. Well, diversity is primarily in diversity in your gifts. And so you have a team and if you can say, oh, I'm so glad she's great at those things and really celebrate her for that. And I'm so glad that he's great at those and celebrate him for that. It allows you to appreciate one another, allow people to do what they're meant to do. And it's what makes an orchestra great. But too often, and you know, Daniel, I'll tell you, I think the 2 biggest impacts of this tool are people feel guilty for the things they don't have. Like, oh, I'm lacking that. I'm just bad. I'm not, I don't work hard enough. I don't care enough. It's a false thing. Secondly, they judge other people. They're like, well, you don't have that. We don't call it a genius or a gift. You're just not good at doing that. You must not care or you must not work hard enough. And so when you do this, it's allowed me to feel less guilty about the things I'm not great at. Doesn't mean I still don't have to do them sometimes. it also has prevented me from judging others.
Oh, I've done that so many times.
Oh my gosh, we totally do. It's the fundamental attribution error. Well, you're not doing that well because you don't care. No, that's not their gift.
Yeah.
So now I can say to somebody at work, oh, that's okay. That's not your gift. Let's get somebody in there. Or, hey, that's not your gift, but I need you to push through this just this time.
Okay. I like this. And I want to challenge, how do you discern when the case is that they don't care? And they're using it as a cop-out. Oh, that's not my gift. And you're like, no, your heart's not in this thing. I imagine we go back to hungry, humble, smart.
Exactly. Because we all have gifts, but then we have to decide what are we going to do with them. And if a person has great gifts and they work really hard using those gifts, then they have passion. They just might have some big blind spots in other areas. Well, I can deal with that. But if they're not even working hard in the areas of their giftedness, that's a hunger problem.
Okay. So we've got wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity.
And you notice it spells widget. Now, I have to tell you this. We got to the fourth one, and we were like, okay, this says widget.
And you wouldn't have found two that started with an E and a T just to have a widget?
No, it was actually even better than that. The E we couldn't think of a word for, and we came up with the E, and we're like, okay, we're at widget, and we thought, all right, what's the last one? And the tenacity really is a good word for it. There might have been a couple others, but we thought I might as well spell widgets because people can actually remember it that way.
You almost have Ouija board. That could be a whole nother assessment.
In the occult. Stay away from the occult.
Okay, so here's...
let's look at you.
You sent me this thing a couple months ago, I think in the beta mode.
Oh, no, you were one of the first people to take it.
And I filled out...
testing it.
I answered a lot of questions. I don't remember
40?
Much about the questions. 40 questions.
42, actually.
And I'm actually just seeing my results for the first time right here as we're recording this. So talk me through what's wrong with me.
Well, we've brought your wife in to help us with that.
All right.
But so your geniuses are invention. You love to come up with new ideas. A whiteboard and a blank slate is a good thing for you.
Yes.
And that is a natural gift.
And you know what? You're saying whiteboard. We say that metaphorically. I love whiteboards, actual flip charts and markers and whiteboards and doodling and notepads and non-digital aspects of creation of just like getting the stuff on the wall, like sticking. I love that.
So do I. In fact, my whole office, we just painted all our walls with whiteboard pretty much.
That's the best use of a wall, Pat.
Isn't it?
Yes.
We don't even have windows.
I love it.
Go in there.
So you're good at, it's like you thrive in that early part of the creative process.
Yeah, you get energy and joy out of creating new ideas out of nothing. Original, novel solutions to problems. It might be a product, it might be a solution, it might be just coming up with a new way of looking at things, but having an unstructured need to solve a problem is actually a stimulant for you. Mm-hmm. Do you know how many people will say, oh my gosh, that crushes me? They're like, I don't know what to do when that happens. Please don't put me in. And here's you and I, this is one of mine too. We're like, that's the greatest job in the world. And other people are like, no, that would be my misery.
You know, I found this invention thing. This is what we're talking about, invention. Mm-hmm. And as you're describing it, I'm going, I definitely have that. I've struggled when people ask me how you do the thing. So one of my favorite things is leading strategic sessions in a room with a bunch of people with large personalities like Dave Ramsey, and we've got a lot of conflict, and I'm the guy with the marker on the whiteboard. And I walk in with a very loose plan in my mind, very loose.
In fact, it needs to be loose.
And when we start talking, things come in my mind to start drawing on the board, frameworks and models and things that help us communicate better, and it just flows out of me. And people have said, hey, can you teach us how you do that thing? And I'm like, I don't know how I do it.
It's a natural, it's a gift. It was given to you. And so it's not I read this book.
Right.
That's called expertise and knowledge. This is one of those things you were probably doing as a kid.
Totally.
And I was.
Yes.
And you know what's funny? That's not one that was really nurtured in me. So it was a frustrated I. My invention. Nobody was saying, hey, Pat, you're an invention. My parents were both very, very, by the book and structured. And so I wasn't really given many opportunities to do this. And our education system doesn't do that at all.
Right. I struggled so much in school.
Yeah, because your teacher didn't go, hey, why don't you come up with here's what I'm going to teach. Now just come up with something out of nothing.
Because anything that was super structured or the lecture is going on and I'm doodling on my paper, I would get in trouble for doodling, but it was actually my coping mechanism to stay engaged.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually a little bit more engaged in an auditory lecture format if I can write and draw and sketch out pictures of what I'm hearing.
The two that lend themselves to being good in school are your least. And mine too.
This explains a lot.
And mine too. We share the same lower ones. Now, your other gift, though, your other genius is you have the genius of galvanizing.
What does that mean?
That is the person who loves to get people moving, like to get people, hey, let's get in a room and talk about this. I want to get you guys excited. I want to recruit you. I want to do the initial part of organizing, just like, let's all start moving.
Yes.
And it's like, so you like to come up with new ideas and get people excited about them.
I do. And I love when I see a problem and I realize we can do something about it. I've found that I'm really good at helping people understand why it matters to change course.
Yep, that's galvanizing.
And recruiting people and promoting the idea and the direction of where we need to go, the problem we need to solve, or the opportunity to take on. I love that. And I come from a sales background, and I was always really good in sales, but only when I believed in the product.
Right.
I've been in sales jobs for about 2 weeks where it's a crappy product. I'm like, I can't hang. I have to believe this is going to be better for the people buying. And today I sell ideas and vision and direction, and I love it.
Oh my gosh. See, because you are now in a job that allows you to work in your geniuses.
Yes.
Now, if I said to you, Daniel, what I want you to, we'll go to your 2 weakest areas.
Okay.
By the way to understand these is like your 2 geniuses are like this cup right here, a cup of coffee. And if you were to pour coffee into it that's hot and put a lid on it, it's going to hold that energy, that heat for a long time. That's your genius area. Okay. It's like, I could do that forever. Your weaknesses are like a cup you pour into and there's a hole in the bottom of it and it just leaks out the bottom. It holds no energy or joy for you. And your 2 areas of weakness are the genius of tenacity, which is finishing things, and doing the last details to make sure it gets completed and the impact is had at the end, and enablement, which is coming alongside of somebody else's idea and providing whatever support they need.
Yes.
That doesn't mean you're not a nice guy. It just means you like to determine the new idea and get people moving, and then you kind of like to step back.
You know, it really rings true with me. And I struggle sometimes, even with my colleagues, about my lack of, they might even be said sometimes as lack of follow through.
I was going to say, that's mine.
And I'm like, oh, that hurts, because it sounds like I'm not hard work ethic or hungry or doing, but I've had feedback that kind of sounds like, hey, you're really good at getting everybody excited, but then you don't do the real work.
Right. And this is where we have to get rid of our guilt and our judgment, because this is real work.
Yeah.
But people think this is real work. When I was a kid, God rest his soul, my dad, a good man, a wonderful man, he would take me out to mow the lawn every weekend. And I hated it. I loved my dad, but I hated doing it. You know why? Because he would say, just follow me around and do whatever I tell you, and then make sure you finish it and you do it perfectly. And if he had said, hey, see the yard? You go figure it out. I'd have been like inventing like, oh, you know what? I think there's a new way to do it. But no, I had to do it on his terms and according to his specifications. And I wasn't lazy, but I felt like I was like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I just follow him around and rake up the leaves? And it was like, because that goes against my grain. Now, that doesn't mean that in my life as a child and in my life now, there's not times I have to do that. We do.
Of course.
But we need to go, I'm doing this. It's against the grain. It's not my job. I'm doing this today or this week because it's required, and I can gut through this.
Yeah, be a freaking adult. I mean, you've got to do some things out of duty. That's leadership.
But if you have a job that makes you do that every day, you are going to go to work and get very depressed.